A man who assaulted a police officer whilst on duty has been jailed. Victor Jeffries, 64, of Orange Grove, Warrington, was sentenced to 12 months in prison at Cheshire Magistrates Court on Monday the 9th of December after entering a guilty plea at an earlier hearing. The court heard how at around 3 p.m. on Saturday the 7th of December, police were called to a public house on Horsemarket Street following reports of an aggressive man attempting to assault staff. Officers attended and found Mr. Jeffries had been throwing multiple punches and kicks towards staff. Mr. Jeffries then went on to direct his aggression towards officers before brandishing a knife and pointing it towards them. He was quickly disarmed, arrested and placed in the back of a police vehicle. Whilst en route to custody, Mr. Jeffries attempted to headbutt an officer. Mr. Jeffries was charged with assaulting an emergency worker, public order and threats with a bladed article. Chief Inspector Neil Drum of Warrington Local Police Unit said, Mr. Jeffries' actions were utterly unacceptable and caused immense distress, fear and alarm to local members of the community. Officers regularly put their own lives at risk in order to protect others, and they don't go to work in order to be assaulted. Mr. Jeffries could have caused significant harm to officers and members of the public, and I hope this result demonstrates we will not tolerate this type of behaviour in our town. A man has been jailed for more than 2 years after a cannabis farm was discovered at an address in Winsford. Mark Platt appeared at Chester Crown Court on Wednesday the 18th of December, where he was sentenced to 27 months in prison. The 55-year-old of no fixed abode had previously pleaded guilty to possession with intent to supply Class A drugs and production of Class B drugs. The court heard how in the early hours of Sunday the 4th of February 2024, Mr. Platt was arrested by officers from the GMP in relation to an unrelated matter. Following his arrest, officers recovered a mobile phone along with keys to an address on Fieldfair, Winsford. A search was subsequently undertaken at the address where officers discovered a large cannabis farm containing approximately 218 plants at various stages of growth. It was estimated that the cannabis had a potential street value of up to £215,420. As well as the cannabis, officers also discovered approximately 75 grams of cocaine at the address, which had a potential street value of up to £9,350. Officers also found a number of pictures of the cannabis farm when examining Mr. Platt's mobile phone. Mr. Platt was subsequently questioned in relation to the discovery, but he refused to answer any of the questions put to him by the officers. Despite his silence, he was subsequently charged in relation to the matter. Following the sentencing, PC Wayne Thomas of Norwich Local Policing Unit said, I welcome the sentence handed to Mr. Platt, and I hope it act as a warning to others involved in the supply and production of illegal drugs. It is clear that Mr. Platt was running a professional cannabis farm, and this wasn't simply just a few cannabis plants. The whole building had been fitted out with thousands of pounds worth of equipment to maximise the potential yield. Thankfully, we were able to seize all of these plants along with the cocaine and prevent them from being sold on the streets of Winsford, and Mr. Platt is now being held accountable for his actions behind bars. While Mr. Platt is now behind bars, our fight against illegal drugs remains ongoing, and we urge residents to remain vigilant about anyone who suspects this activity is happening near them to come forward and tell us about it. A father and daughter have been jailed for a combined total of 11 years after a man was stabbed while celebrating on New Year's Eve. Connor McQuaid of Appleby Walk, Wines, and Charlotte McQuaid of Lancaster Road, Wines, appeared at Liverpool Crown Court on Monday the 16th of December, where they were both sentenced for Section 18 assault. Connor McQuaid, 44, received a 6-year sentence with a further 2 years to be served on extended licence, while Charlotte McQuaid, 21, received 5 years. Around 2:30 a.m. on Monday the 1st of January 2024, Cheshire police received reports that a man had been assaulted outside a nightclub in Victoria Square, Wines. The victim, who was 20 at the time of the incident, was taken to hospital for treatment for 3 stab wounds and needed emergency surgery. Following this, he was able to speak to officers and identify Connor McQuaid as the man who had attacked him. The investigation revealed that Charlotte McQuaid had been at the same nightclub as the victim celebrating New Year's Eve. She had previously made an allegation against him, but no further action was taken against him following a police investigation. Charlotte McQuaid still resented the man and tried to take matters into her own hands. She therefore contacted her father, Connor McQuaid, to point out the victim's location. As the evening progressed, the victim was standing outside the venue when he was attacked by Connor McQuaid, who had arrived at the area with a knife. Charlotte McQuaid was arrested the following day. Meanwhile, Connor McQuaid was arrested on the 6th of January. The pair were subsequently charged with attempted murder. However, a trial at Liverpool Crown Court ultimately decided to convict them of Section 18 assault instead. Following the sentencing, Detective Constable Gemma Nicholson said, "I welcome the sentences handed to the two defendants in this case. Clearly showed no regard for the victim, inflicting such horrendous injuries on him as he was enjoying the New Year festivities." Officers worked tirelessly to complete extensive inquiries and compile a comprehensive file of evidence, subsequently bringing both defendants before the courts. I hope the conclusion of this case brings the victims some sense of closure and also reassures members of the community that those who commit these types of offences will be arrested and held accountable for their actions. Have renewed their appeal for information on the 30th anniversary of the death of a woman in a churchyard in Cheshire. Tracy, 31, was doused in petrol and set alight in Eton Churchyard near Conglington, 23rd of December 1994. She sustained horrific burns to her body and died shortly after. Officers are urging anyone who may have information in relation to her death to come forward. Detective Inspector Nigel Reed said, "This week marks the 30th anniversary of Tracy's death, a time that is understandably still very difficult for her family. Tracy met a violent and horrific death at the hands of her killers. She was so brave and told detectives as much as she could before she died. Although extensive inquiries have been completed, including arrests, forensic reviews and CPS advice, to date no one has ever been convicted in relation to the death of Tracy, and the file remains open. As an organisation, we continue to review undetected investigations and will always act on any new information. Therefore, as Tracy's family prepares to spend another Christmas Day without her, I would appeal to anyone who has any information about Tracy's death to get in touch." The mother of two, who was living in Rochdale at the time, had travelled down to Birmingham on the 22nd of November 1994 to collect a benefit book from her former home in Cattle's Grove, Nechells. It is believed she initially intended to return the same day, but ended up staying overnight at her sister-in-law's and visited a former home this morning. Shortly before midday, the 23rd of December 1994, she answered a knock at the door of the house in Cattle's Grove. She was confronted by two men. Police believe Tracy was abducted and bundled into the back of a yellow Ford Escort, which was parked outside the address. Tracy was then driven to Eton Churchyard in Cheshire, where she was set on fire and left to die. A member of the public came to her aid and she was taken to hospital, where she was able to tell detectives what happened to her. She had sustained 95% burns to her body and bravely clung to her life for a further 12 hours before she sadly died. Anyone with any information should contact Operation Eton Investigation Team at Cheshire Police, quoting IML 1983827. A man from Northwich has been sentenced for firearm offences and criminal damage. Robert McNally appeared at Chester Crown Court on the 5th of December to be sentenced after pleading guilty to possession of a firearm with intent to cause fear of violence and criminal damage. The 43-year-old of Burgess Place in Northwich was sentenced to a month in prison and was handed a deprivation order preventing him from owning a pistol, carbon dioxide canister and pellet ammunition. On 2:08 p.m. on the Monday the 8th of July, Mr. McNally called the police telling them he was feeling violent after being discharged from hospital and had a gun. He also said he had ammunition. Response and firearms officers were called to Mr. McNally's home in Burgess Place, Northwich, and a cordon was put in place while they tried to negotiate with him. Mr. McNally was extremely agitated and refused to comply with officers negotiating with him. Armed police warned him of their presence, and he was instructed to come to the front door empty-handed with his hands on his head. Despite the warning, Mr. McNally then appeared in the back garden, brandishing a silver pistol in his left hand. He pointed it upwards before throwing a large torch in the direction of two firearms officers who were at the rear of the property, using the car as hard cover. The torch hit the police car, causing minor damage. Mr. McNally then re-entered his address before coming back out and aiming a pistol at two firearms officers over the garden gate. One single shot was fired through the garden gate by one of the officers towards Mr. McNally, who did not strike him. The officers stationed at the front of the property then entered the address and used distraction devices by throwing them into the sitting room. They then moved towards the kitchen door, but Mr. McNally tried to wedge it closed. A further distraction device was thrown through the glass into the kitchen door. Officers then entered the kitchen shouting warnings to Mr. McNally, ordering him to stand still and put the gun on the floor. Mr. McNally was crouched in the corner of the kitchen with the pistol in his right hand pointing it upwards. He then lowered his hand and put the gun on the floor. He was subsequently arrested. After his arrest, the weapon was found to be a gas-powered BB gun. DC Sarah Ollier said, "Mr. McNally put himself and the officers in a very dangerous position, causing officers enough concern that a shot had to be fired. Thankfully, officers were able to bring the incident to a safe conclusion, meaning that nobody was injured and Mr. McNally was successfully arrested. However, the outcome could have been far worse. I understand the concern amongst residents at this time of the incident that several shots had been fired, but it was actually the sound of the distraction devices that helped the officers get into the house and bring the incident to a safe conclusion for everyone." A 49-year-old man has been banned from 5 convenience stores across Crewe for 3 years after being issued with a criminal behaviour order. Andrew Crimes, 49, had been handed a 3-year order banning him from several convenience stores across Crewe. Mr. Crimes, of no fixed address, Crewe, appeared at Crewe Magistrates Court on Thursday the 12th of December, where he was handed the order following an application by Crewe Beat Management Team. Under the order, the 49-year-old had been banned from entering several stores within the Crewe area for 3 years. These include Tesco Extra on Vernon Way, Co-op on Reamer Street, Morrison's on Dunwoody Way, and Morrison's Daily on Gainsborough Road. Mr. Crimes, of no fixed address but of Crewe, has also been banned from entering the Queen's Park Service Station Esso on Victoria Avenue under the order. Police Constable Justin Taylor of Crewe South Beat Management said, "Criminal behaviour orders are just one of the many tools we use to deter prolific offenders disrupting our retailers. I welcome the issuing of this CBO and I hope this can provide some reassurance to local business owners and residents that we are doing all we can to deter criminality like this from occurring in our communities." A 26-year-old man has been jailed after carrying a knife in Warrington. Jack Finlay of Main Street, Cumbernauld, appeared at Chester's Magistrate Court on Wednesday the 11th of December, where he was jailed for 50 weeks. This included 26 weeks for possession of a bladed article and possession of cannabis, as well as the activation of a 24-week suspended sentence, which was imposed on November the 1st by Birmingham and Solihull Magistrates Court. Mr. Finlay was originally stopped by security staff in Golden Square Shopping Centre, Warrington, on Tuesday the 10th of December in relation to an unrelated matter. Project Sevator officers on deployment in the area were able to assist security staff after searching Mr. Finlay. He was found to be in possession of a folding lock knife and a small quantity of cannabis. He was subsequently arrested for these offences and later charged, pleading guilty at court. Inspector Lee Hilliard said, "I welcome the sentence handed to Mr. Finlay, who had no choice but to plead guilty in court. In the run-up to Christmas, there will be additional officers patrolling in Warrington Town Centre to reassure residents over the festive period and ensure those committing criminality are dealt with swiftly. This case also demonstrates the importance of our Project Sevator deployments. Project Sevator is a highly visible policing tactic that aims to disrupt a range of criminal activity while providing a reassuring presence to the public. The approach relies on police working with communities, including business, members of the public and security staff, to build a network of vigilance. On this occasion, thanks to our joint working with security staff at Golden Square, officers were able to assist and subsequently arrest Mr. Finlay after finding him to be in possession of a bladed article and drugs. Project Sevator involves carrying out unpredictable deployments that can happen anywhere at any time, utilising a range of resources such as plainclothes police officers. A serial stalker has been recalled to prison after failing to comply with his licence conditions. Grant Hodnett, Coniston Avenue, Winsford, has been recalled to prison due to breaching his licence conditions. In February 2024, Mr. Hodnett was sentenced to 18 months in prison for stalking a woman whilst also breaching a restraining order to protect a second woman he previously stalked. The 42-year-old was released on licence in September after serving half of his sentence. Part of Mr. Hodnett's strict licence conditions, he was required to inform his probation officer of any developing relationships. In late November, Cheshire Police received notification from a neighbouring force that Mr. Hodnett had started a relationship with a woman he'd met via online using a dating app. This triggered a response from the Harm Reduction Unit, Cheshire's Specialist Stalking Investigation and Risk Management Unit, which incorporates probation officers and NHS mental health professionals. Checks quickly confirmed that Mr. Hodnett had failed to inform the probation service of this relationship or of his use of dating apps, despite having multiple opportunities to do so. Triggered an emergency recall on Thursday the 5th of December, and Mr. Hodnett was arrested less than 24 hours later. As a result of his actions, Mr. Hodnett is now back in prison, where he will serve the remainder of his sentence. Police Constable Keith Terrell of the Harm Reduction Unit said, Mr. Hodnett's actions have again shown he is either unable or unwilling to adhere to the conditions placed upon him. Thanks to swift information sharing and the integration of the Harm Reduction Unit with the probation service, we were quickly able to identify the developing risk Mr. Hodnett posed and safeguard the public by recalling him to prison. I hope that this demonstrates how Cheshire Police and our partners continue to monitor stalking perpetrators and serial domestic abuse perpetrators long after investigations and court cases have ended, and that we will use every tool and power available to us to protect the public from the risks they pose. The Harm Reduction Unit is a specialist risk management service delivered by Cheshire Constabulary in conjunction with Merseycare NHS Foundation Trust, Cheshire and Wirral Partnership, NHS Foundation Trust, and the Probation Service. The unit also includes dedicated investigation teams taking primacy from the most serious and complexing stalking investigations. A 6-year-old woman from Loggershead has been sentenced for causing death by dangerous driving. Alison Cooper of Badger Brow Road in Loggershead appeared at Chester Crown Court on the 12th of September and pleaded guilty to an offence. She appeared at Chester Crown Court on the 25th of November to be sentenced to 40 months in prison and subjected to a 5-year ban. The collision occurred around 4:45 p.m. on Thursday the 16th of June 2022 on the A500 in Barnsley. Mrs. Cooper was driving her red Ford Fiesta home from work when she braked harshly, causing 29-year-old Chris Pearsons to take evasive action. This resulted in his black Renault Clio veering into oncoming traffic and colliding with a blue Seat Ateca travelling in the opposite direction. Sadly, Chris, who was from Moyston in North Wales, died at the scene. His family said at the time, "Our beloved Chris sadly passed away on Thursday the 16th of June 2022 at 29 years old. Words can't describe the heartache we as a family are going through. He was a wonderful son, brother, uncle, and a loving father to his 3 amazing children, who he will be sorely missed by. He was an amazing, kind, wonderful person who would go above and beyond for absolutely anyone. Peace, Shifty, fly high, gone but never forgotten." Following the sentence, the family said, "We as a family would like to thank Cheshire Police for all their hard work throughout this case that has helped get some justice for Chris. Nothing will ever bring our Chris back home to us, but we are overwhelmed by the sentence that has been given today. Chris's death has impacted the family immensely, and every day is spent missing him. Knowing that we have a little bit of justice for our family, justice for his children, and for his friends is something that will make our healing a tiny bit easier." DC Lisa Evans Hill of the Serious Collision Investigation Unit said, "This was a dangerous action on a busy road with fatal consequences. The decision to brake caused not only Chris's family's lives danger, Chris's family's lives to change forever that day, but Mrs. Cooper's as well. Carefully about their actions behind the wheel. Everyone should be aware that when they get in a vehicle, they have the potential to cause real damage and even take a life. You have not only your life in your hands, but others on the road as well. This needs to be remembered every time you make a journey. Please drive carefully and safely for everyone's sake." A 41-year-old man has been jailed for dealing drugs in Northwich Town. Gavin Jones of Denton Drive, Northwich, appeared at Chester Crown Court on Monday the 18th of November, where he was jailed for 3 years after pleading guilty to possession with intent, concerned in the supply of cocaine, concerned in the supply of cannabis, and possession of criminal property. On Friday the 14th of July 2023, officers conducted a warrant at Mr. Jones's then address on London Road, Northwich, after receiving intelligence that he was involved in the supply of cocaine in the Northwich area. Upon entry to the address, Mr. Jones was spotted by officers throwing a large clear-covered package out the window. Scales were recovered following the search of a near vicinity, but the package was not located. Officers seized several items including wraps of cocaine, a quantity of cash, and 3 mobile phones. Mr. Jones was arrested at the scene, and during questioning he declined to answer any questions in relation to the drugs offences. Despite his denial, he was subsequently charged in relation to that incident. Following the sentencing, Detective Constable Claire Heatley said, "Mr. Jones thought he was untouchable and above the law, continuing to deal drugs even after he was charged. Unfortunately for him, our ears stayed to the ground, and a further warrant was executed at his home address. We seized mobile phones and another large amount of cash, evidencing that he had continued to deal cocaine whilst on bail awaiting sentencing. Messages were also found where he was bragging to his customers about how long he had gotten away with drug dealing. I hope this sentence demonstrates that dealers like Mr. Jones are not untouchable, and our committed team of eagle-eyed officers are always watching and are always one step ahead." A 29-year-old man from Chester has been jailed after admitting defrauding his partner to the tune of more than £20,000. Thomas Mark Leatherbarrow from Summer Road in Chester appeared at Chester Crown Court on the 21st of November 2024, where he was sentenced to 30 months in prison and issued a 15-year restraining order. He pleaded guilty to 6 counts of fraud by false representation at an earlier hearing. Mr. Leatherbarrow admitted that between July 2017 and May 2022, he stole the money by taking out credit cards in her name, deceitfully using her credit cards and debit card, and taking money out of her current account and ISA. PC Alexandra Tymosica said, "To ensure that the victim did not go to the police, he made up an email address and pretended to be a financial ombudsman. He created a web of lies and went to great lengths to cover it all up. He stole from a woman he was meant to love. They even married during the period he was defrauding her. To facilitate the frauds, he used a range of controlling and coercive behaviour, subjecting his partner to years of suffering and misery. When I first met her, she did not even realise that she had been subject to a prolonged domestic abuse. The victim showed great bravery. I know it was very difficult for her to come forward and report her partner of 10 years, who was meant to be protecting her and caring for her, for worse. I welcome the court's sentencing and hope it will be a deterrent to others."